Have you ever felt like you're surrounded by actors? I know I have. People wear masks every day, pretending to be something they're not. But here's the interesting part. Once you learn to read between the lines, you see beyond the act. I remember being in a meeting, everyone nodding and smiling, but I knew behind those smiles there were hidden agendas. It was all in the feet, the silence, the little pauses. And believe me, once you start noticing these signals, you'll never see people the same way again. Ready to discover what they're really hiding? Let's dive into it. First, the tell me more technique. Let me tell you, this technique is like having a superpower but without the flashy costume or cape. The best part is that no one even realizes you're using it. It's so simple, yet so effective. All you have to do is relax, stay calm, and when someone is passionately sharing their side of the story, instead of jumping in with your opinion or arguing, you just use 3 small words. Tell me more. I discovered this years ago during a conversation with a friend about whether pineapple belongs on pizza or not. I was ready to counter every point he made, but something clicked, and instead of debating, I just smiled and said, "Tell me more." What happened next was surprising. They started talking about pizza, but soon they were opening up about childhood memories, family dinners, the foods they loved, and even a strange story about why they hated pineapple as a kid. It wasn't about pizza anymore. It was a dive into their inner world, all with just 3 words. Here's the point. When people feel heard, they let their guard down, and when they don't feel the need to defend or argue, they end up sharing much more than they planned. You create a safe space where they feel comfortable enough to drop their usual defenses. They may think they're just chatting, but in reality, they're revealing their motivations, fears, insecurities, and even hopes, all without realizing it. I've used this trick in business meetings with friends and even with people who seemed a bit suspicious. Once, during a negotiation, instead of pushing my agenda, I just kept saying, "Tell me more." By the end, the other side had laid out their entire strategy, explaining why they were desperate for a deal. They practically handed me the keys to their kingdom, and all I did was listen. It felt almost too easy. But here's the deeper truth. This isn't just a tactic to gather more information or win an argument. It's about connection. In a world where everyone is quick to talk but slow to listen, tell me more becomes a way to understand people on a deeper level. It forces you to step out of your own ego, stop thinking about what you're going to say next, and actually care about the other person's perspective. When you ask people to explain themselves without judgment, you give them a rare gift, truly being heard. And in that moment, you build trust, understanding, and sometimes even healing. This technique reflects one of the core teachings of Stoicism, empathy without attachment. You're not trying to manipulate or control the conversation. You're simply observing, understanding, and staying calm. It's not just about reading people. It's about seeing them for who they truly are and allowing them to reveal their true selves. So, next time you're in a conversation, whether it's a casual chat, a negotiation, or even a heated debate, try the "tell me more" technique. You'll be amazed at how deep the conversation can go, how much people reveal, and how easy it becomes to truly understand them without having to push. Beyond just winning a conversation, you'll find that this approach builds real human connections based on respect and genuine curiosity. That's where the real power lies, seeing others and through them, learning more about yourself. Second, watch how they treat people in lower positions. If you really want to know someone's true character, don't just watch how they treat you. Observe how they treat people they see as beneath them. This is a bit controversial because, let's be honest, it reveals the harsh truth about human nature. Whether it's a waiter at a restaurant, a cashier at the grocery store, or even a colleague in a junior position at work, how someone interacts with those with less power says a lot about who they are. I learned this the hard way. I used to work with someone who at first glance seemed like the nicest person, friendly, funny, and always respectful in meetings. But one day, we went out for lunch and I saw a different side of them. The moment we sat down, they were rude to the waiter, giving orders like they were royalty and the server was beneath them. It was shocking to see how quickly they switched from being friendly and warm to dismissive and arrogant. That was a wake-up call for me, and I realized that this wasn't just a one-off slip. It was a reflection of their true character. They were only kind when it benefited them. People show their true nature when they think no one important is watching. If they're condescending to the waiter, they'll be condescending to anyone they believe can't fight back. If they're dismissive of a colleague because they're in a junior role, guess what? That arrogance and lack of respect will show up in other areas of their life too. The person who is kind to you but rude to others isn't kind. They're calculating. Think about it. When there's no social pressure to be polite and someone knows they can treat others poorly without consequences, that's when their real personality shines through. Stoicism teaches us to observe human behavior objectively, and this is one of the clearest indicators of someone's integrity. It's easy to be nice when there's something to gain, but true character shows when there's nothing to lose. I've used this principle in friendships, work relationships, and even dating. It's become a kind of silent test for me. If someone treats the janitor with respect, if they thank the bus driver or show kindness to a stranger, they're someone worth knowing. But if they're the type to be unnecessarily harsh or dismissive, that's a red flag you can't ignore. And here's where it gets even deeper. How we treat others is a reflection of how we see ourselves. People who respect everyone, regardless of status, are usually secure in themselves. They don't need to put others down to feel important, but those who are cruel to others are often projecting their own insecurities, trying to elevate themselves at the expense of those they see as weaker. It's a form of arrogance that Stoicism teaches us to recognize and avoid in ourselves. So, if you want to know who someone really is, don't be fooled by how they treat people they need to impress. Instead, pay attention to how they treat those who have nothing to offer. It's the surest way to see beyond the mask and get to the heart of who they truly are. Finally, the past is the key to the present. If you really want to understand someone, take a deep look into their past. People often say that the past is behind us, but the truth is, it's never truly over. It's shaping everything about who they are today, whether they realize it or not. Their experiences, traumas, victories, and relationships influence how they think, behave, and even how they treat you in the present moment. This might be controversial because it suggests that people don't just move on, they carry their history with them, and sometimes that history is the blueprint for their actions. I had a friend who always seemed defensive no matter the situation. He was overly cautious, quick to anger, and extremely guarded in relationships. At first I thought it was just part of his personality, but as I got to know him better, I learned about his past. He had been deeply betrayed by people he trusted. When we trust someone, we often find out that they may have faced financial struggles or grown up in an environment where they constantly had to prove their worth. We start to realize that their defensiveness isn't random. It's a direct result of feeling like they need to protect themselves from getting hurt again. Our past experiences leave marks, sometimes scars, and they can explain why someone behaves the way they do. A person who grew up feeling neglected might seek constant attention in adulthood. Someone who was burned by a business partner might now distrust anyone trying to collaborate with them. The key here isn't to make excuses for people's behavior, but to understand that they're not always acting based on the present moment. They're reacting to echoes of their past. Stoicism teaches us to view things as they are, without judgment, and understanding someone's past is part of seeing them clearly. I've seen this happen in romantic relationships too. Have you ever dated someone who seemed perfectly fine at first, but then certain patterns started to show up? Maybe they're overly jealous or have a hard time with commitment. 9 times out of 10, if you dig deep enough, you'll discover that their past relationships left wounds that still haven't fully healed. It's the fear of being hurt again that drives their present behavior. Understanding this doesn't mean you should tolerate toxic behavior, but it gives you insight into why they act the way they do. And here's the hard truth. People often live their lives stuck in cycles, repeating behaviors learned from past experiences. It's like they're trapped, reliving the same patterns over and over again without even realizing it. That person at work who's constantly seeking validation might be replaying a childhood where they never felt good enough. The friend who sabotages every relationship is likely responding to a deep fear of rejection that stems from past heartbreak. Their reactions, habits, and decisions are all a mirror reflecting the unresolved parts of their past. But here's where it gets even deeper. Understanding someone's past not only helps you navigate your relationship with them, but it can also help them break free from those cycles. If you can gently point out the patterns they're repeating, you can help them become more self-aware. In doing so, they might finally face what they've been avoiding for years. Stoicism emphasizes self-reflection and improvement, and sometimes understanding someone's past allows you to guide them toward better personal growth. It's easy to judge people based on how they act now, but the past is the key to unlocking the reasons behind those actions. When you begin to see people's behavior as responses to their history, you can approach them with more empathy while also protecting yourself from getting caught up in their unresolved issues. In short, the past is always present. To truly understand someone, you need to see the full picture, not just the chapter they're currently living in. Sudden changes in tone of voice can signal lies or hesitation. One of the biggest clues that someone is lying or hiding something is a sudden shift in their tone of voice. Most people don't realize it, but our voices often betray what's going on beneath the surface. When someone speaks with confidence, their tone is usually steady, their pace even, and their words flow naturally. But when there's a lie or hesitation, things change. Sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. It's like the subconscious is trying to raise red flags, hoping you'll notice. I remember a coworker who was always very persuasive, knew exactly what to say, and always did so with charm. But one day when we were discussing a project deadline, something changed. His voice, which was usually upbeat and confident, suddenly dropped, and his words came out slower, almost stammering. I immediately sensed something was off, and sure enough, I later found out he hadn't made any progress on the project, but was trying to cover it up. That change in tone was the giveaway. He wasn't telling the whole truth, and it was clear in how he spoke. Here's why this happens. When people lie or feel uncomfortable with what they're saying, their body and mind go into conflict. The brain is trying to maintain the lie or hide their uncertainty, but the body, specifically the voice, can't help but reflect the stress. This might come across as a higher pitch, a tremble in the voice, or even a pause that seems just a bit too long. It's like the tone is out of sync with the words. Think about the last time you caught someone lying. How did their voice sound? Did it suddenly get quieter or maybe start speeding up? Maybe their voice took on a forced cheerfulness, as if trying too hard to sound normal. These are all signs that something isn't right. A shift in tone is a subconscious way of signaling discomfort, whether because they're lying, hiding something, or simply unsure. And it's not just about catching lies. Sudden tone changes also signal hesitation or uncertainty. I had a friend who was always really excited about plans we made. But the moment I suggested something she didn't really want to do, her tone changed instantly. She went from excited to flat, like someone had flipped a switch. That was always my sign that she wasn't fully on board, even if her words said otherwise. This phenomenon happens in relationships, business, and even casual conversations. You've probably experienced it yourself. When someone goes from friendly and upbeat to defensive or evasive, even if their words don't match the change, those are the moments when you need to pay attention not to what they're saying, but to how they're saying it. A sudden drop in energy, a shift in tone or hesitation that wasn't there before can be a subconscious signal that they're lying or hiding something important. Here's a deeper Stoic lesson. People often lie not just to deceive others, but to deceive themselves. When their tone shifts, it's not always because they're trying to manipulate you, but because they're uncomfortable with the lie they're telling themselves. That discomfort seeps into their voice, revealing them without their knowing it. Stoicism teaches us to observe without judgment, and this is a clear example of how you can use that power of observation. By paying attention to the subtle shifts in someone's tone, you can get a clearer picture of their inner struggle. It's also worth noting that we do this to ourselves. How often have you said something you didn't fully believe and noticed your own voice faltering? Your tone becomes a mirror of your inner doubt. That's why Stoicism emphasizes aligning your thoughts, words, and actions. When they aren't in harmony, it usually shows in ways you can't control. So next time you're in a conversation and notice an unexpected change in someone's tone, whether it's a sudden drop in energy, an awkward pause, or a tonal shift. Don't ignore it. Ask yourself, what are they hiding? What's bothering them? It may not be a complete lie, but chances are they're not telling you the whole truth. Their voice is your clue, and if you listen carefully, you'll catch it every time. Finally, the most honest moments are when they think no one is watching. If you really want to know who someone is at their core, watch them when they think no one is paying attention. Those are the moments when people drop the mask they wear for society, the social persona they've created to fit in or get ahead, and reveal their true nature. It's a controversial truth, because most of us like to believe that who we are in public is the same as who we are in private. But the reality is that people often behave very differently when they think no one is watching. I remember working with a manager who was always the picture of professionalism when the boss was around. She made polite small talk, kept a calm demeanor, and never raised her voice. But the moment our bosses left the office, it was like she became a completely different person. She would start yelling at the staff, making snarky remarks, and treating people with zero respect. It was shocking, and it taught me an important lesson. The person someone is when they think no one is watching is often the most authentic version of themselves. When people are in the spotlight, they're very aware of how they're being seen and act in ways they think will please or avoid trouble. But once they feel they're off the radar, the filters come off. You see it in small details like their reactions when they think no one's looking, how they treat people who can't offer them anything, or how they behave when they think they won't be held accountable. Those are the moments when their true self comes through. This applies to all areas of life, from relationships to business to everyday encounters. For example, in romantic relationships, early on, both people are usually on their best behavior, trying to impress the other. But if you want to really get to know someone, observe them in the quiet moments when they're not trying to impress you. How do they treat the waitress at dinner? How do they react when they're stressed or when they think you're not paying attention? Do they still show kindness, patience, and respect? Or does the mask fall, revealing something less pleasant? I've seen this in social groups too. You may have a friend who's the center of attention, always cracking jokes and drawing smiles. But when they think no one's watching, they act indifferent, selfish, or dismissive. True character doesn't show in the big public moments, but in the small interactions no one else sees. This is where the Stoic insight comes in. As a Stoic, you're taught to observe life objectively and without judgment. People often show their true essence when they think they're off stage, and those are the moments when you can really understand them. Stoicism teaches us that virtue isn't about how we act when we're observed, but how we behave when no one is looking. The person who remains kind, patient, and respectful even when no one applauds is someone who lives aligned with Stoic values. But the reality is that many people aren't like that. They separate their public and private behaviors, acting in ways that benefit their image in public while letting their less pleasant traits show in private. I had a colleague who was very friendly and positive whenever we were in a group meeting. He always had something nice to say and made sure to show support. But when we were alone, his behavior completely changed. He became cold, arrogant, and uninterested in helping unless there was something in it for him. That's when I realized his public attitude was just a facade. The most genuine moments aren't when someone is under the spotlight, but when they think no one is watching for better or worse. It's in those moments that the truth comes out, and that's when you really see who they are. If someone can only be kind when they're being observed, that's not true kindness, it's performance. And here's the important Stoic message. True character is the one that holds up in the shadows, not on the lit stage. As Stoicism teaches, we should strive to live by our values all the time, regardless of who's watching. Whether the room is full or empty, a Stoic's actions are consistent because they come from within, not from the need for external approval. When you observe others in their unmasked moments, you not only see their truth but also remind yourself of the importance of living authentically, even when no one is watching. So next time you want to truly understand someone, don't focus on the grand gestures or their public image. Instead, pay attention to what they do when they're away from the spotlight. That's where you'll find their true character and where the truth lies. Emotional reactions reveal priorities. If you want to understand what really matters to someone, watch how they react emotionally in different situations. Emotional reactions are like an unfiltered window to the soul. They show priorities, values, and what's truly important to that person. This can be challenging because many of us like to think we're in control of our emotions, that we can hide what really matters to us. But the truth is, when someone reacts intensely, whether with anger, enthusiasm, or even anxiety, it's a clear sign that their emotional response is tied to something deeply important to them. The boss who reacts angrily when you question a decision isn't just defending their authority. It's because their self-worth is tied to always being right. The friend who gets defensive when you point out something small might be reacting because you've touched on an insecurity or something they deeply care about. The joy someone shows when praised for a job well done indicates that recognition is important to them, even if they've never openly said so. The key is that people's most intense emotional reactions, whether positive or negative, reveal their biggest priorities. In relationships, this concept is especially powerful. If you're dating someone and notice they get really upset when plans don't go as expected, it shows that spending time together is very important to them. If they get excited when talking about a future trip or activity, it indicates that creating shared moments is a priority. Emotions are always tied to values, and paying attention to someone's emotional reactions gives you a clear picture of their priorities without them needing to say it outright. A great example is when people get unexpectedly defensive. Imagine you casually mention that someone has been late a few times, and instead of responding calmly, they get flustered and defensive. This reaction isn't just about the tardiness. It's because punctuality, or being seen as reliable, is something they value a lot. Their emotional response reflects how important that point is to them. They don't want to be perceived as unreliable, so they react to protect that image of themselves. Stoicism teaches us to observe human behavior without bias, and emotions are one of the most revealing signals of behavior. When someone's emotions flare up, it's because something they care about is at stake. You can use this understanding to better grasp the people around you and handle your interactions with them more effectively. If you know what triggers their emotions, you can navigate sensitive topics more carefully, or use that knowledge to strengthen relationships and foster deeper understanding. But here's the deeper Stoic lesson. Your emotions also reveal your own priorities. When you notice that you're reacting intensely to something, take a moment to reflect on why. Does this really matter to you? Or is it your ego talking? Are you upset because someone is questioning your integrity? Or are you just bothered because your image is being challenged? Stoicism teaches that by understanding our emotional reactions, we can gain more control over them. We can recognize when our emotions are tied to values that truly matter, and when they're just a product of our pride or insecurities. The ability to read people isn't magical. It's about paying attention to the subtle signals they give off. Their emotions, body language, and reactions reveal so much about their true intentions, values, and priorities. Stoicism offers an advantage because it teaches us to observe without judgment. When you can look beyond the surface and pick up on the unspoken truths, you gain clarity in every social situation. But this skill isn't just about having an advantage, it's about understanding. The more you observe others, the more you learn about yourself, what triggers your emotions, what you value, and how you can live in alignment with your principles. By interpreting people in an honest and intelligent way, you not only handle life better, but also become a more reflective and self-aware individual. This is the true power, using this understanding not to manipulate, but to gain wisdom and grow as a person. In short, emotional reactions reveal much more than words can say. They show what is most important and the values of each person, including our own. By applying Stoic teachings, we learn to observe these emotions objectively without judgment, understanding what truly matters to each individual. This understanding helps us improve our relationships and, above all, grow as individuals, aligning our actions with the principles we truly value. If you found this content useful for your personal and Stoic growth, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with others who might also benefit from this message. Share your experiences and insights in the comments below. Your participation is essential and helps strengthen our learning and reflection community. Let's continue this journey of growth together.